Hello there, world of tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Droodles Blitz, and in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at a Tier 7 collector British light tank, known as the A46. It's honestly a goofy looking vehicle. I originally thought when I saw it was coming into the game that it was going to be like a Tier 5, because it just kind of has that Tier 5 aesthetic going for it. If you told me this was going to be a Tier 7, I would have been like, what? I really just didn't expect it to be one. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at this vehicle's armor profile, statistics, and how I feel it's going to play if it does come into the game in the current state. I should mention that Wargaming usually doesn't change the Tier 7 and 8 tanks as much as 10, but it is still in testing, and that means that it could be subject to change depending on how it does perform. Sometimes Wargaming doesn't test vehicles. A great example of this would be something like the Rammer, which is kind of a joke if you ask me, and should have been tested thoroughly because it's kind of a pile of crap. Either way, we're going to be taking a look at the A46. First of all, we have the armor, and it's non-existent. The lower plate is 20 millimeters. The upper plate is 34 effective, and the turret is around 30, meaning that literally HE, even like trash HE, which has 40 mils of pen, is going to be able to easily cut through this tank with no issue whatsoever. I mean, look at how flat that lower plate is. So 150 millimeters, like the Smasher, like the KV2 and the SU-152, are going to be having a wet dream over this tank. And now we have the statistics. And obviously, if its armor is bad, then its gun has to be good. And you'd be correct. The gun is really good on this vehicle. Let's properly equip it really quickly so we can get a full idea of how the tank's going to play. So first of all, we have damage per minute, 2,524. That's pretty good. It's not like ridiculous levels of DPM. There are Tier 7 mediums, like the Aufklärungs Panzer Panther, which actually have around 2,600, and the T23E3 is around 2,800. So there are definitely Tier 7s that have a lot more DPM. But they don't have HESH. This tank's premium ammo has 19 millimeters less pen, but gains 300 additional damage per minute because the damage per shot goes up by 20. That's pretty nasty. That's pretty nasty. If you get to the rear or sides of any lightly armored vehicles or even heavies, you're going to be able to just butter through them, and in return, get out really good damage per minute. This tank features pretty good gun depression as well. We can see that in total it has 9 degrees, so it'll be pretty flexible on really any ridgeline. Base damage per shot is 160. I should also mention it has standard HE, which does 200 damage per shot, but it only has 43 mils of pen, so good luck being able to actually use the standard high explosive on the vehicle. Dispersion is decent, 0.317. It's not great. You could run refined gun, but I also want good on movement dispersion, which this tank actually does have. So it's actually a nice little combination there, and it's going to allow the vehicle to be pretty effective on the majority of situations you use it in terms of the accuracy and on movement capabilities. It's ridiculously fast, has a top speed of 67 and a reverse of 22. And judging that the power to weight is 34 on hard terrain and 26 on medium, this is one of the fastest Tier 7 lights in the game. It's going to be up there with the Dracula and M41D in terms of acceleration. If you have Adrenaline activated and you're firing HESH, you have 3,300 effective DPM for 34 seconds. That's crazy. This tank is going to be able to absolutely maul you to pieces if it gets behind you. And because of that, yeah, it's going to be quite a little beast if you ask my personal opinion. Now, something I would like to do is compare it to the Comet. The Comet is a Tier 7 medium, and it's a tech tree medium, and Wargaming recently gave it a HESH firing gun. So I thought it'd be interesting to compare the HESH firing gun's damage per minute and overall capabilities to the A46 we just went over. So let's start off by taking a look at the vehicle's damage per minute. We can see it is 2,305. So the Comet has quite a bit less damage per minute. But one thing that you should notice is the Comet has 12 degrees of gun depression. So, yeah, that's a huge difference in gun depression. 3 degrees more in the Comet, which is absolutely massive. Not only that, but it has a little bit more pen. Instead of 140, it has 153, which will allow it to cut through a bit more frontal protection. So, something else to keep in mind. But holy crap, is that standard HE awful at only 22 mils of pen. But yeah, damage per minute wise, you're going to have a big advantage in the A46 on standard ammo. However, that's not always the case. You'll notice that the Comet has 200 damage per shot on the premium, where it was only 180 for the A46. So if we take the 4.16 second reload, we pull out our calculator really quick, and we take 4.16, and what we do, 60 divided by 4.16, and then you multiply that by 200. That means the Comet has 2,884 DPM when loading high explosive, and this tank has 2,839. So essentially, they have the exact same DPM. And in fact, the Comet has a slight bit more damage per minute. So that is something to keep in mind. You're going to have more DPM with the A46 on standard ammo, but quite a bit similar on the premium. In general, I think the Comet might be a little bit better in this regard, down to the fact that it does literally deal more damage per shot, which will allow it to not have to poke as much, which is kind of nice. Dispersion-wise, the tanks are the same, so there's not really much to mention there. Mobility-wise, the Comet is fast. It's got a power to weight of 21.3, but here's the big advantage for the A46. It's a light tank. Being a light tank gives you two inherent advantages. First of all light tanks have concealment on the move, which mediums don't. So if we make our way to any light tank in the game, for example, you look at something like the Ranger, you go over to the vehicle's capabilities, it has concealment in movement. Concealment does not decrease while moving the vehicle. And that's a huge advantage. So if we make our way back over to the camo values of this vehicle, we can see it has 37% while moving and 37% while sitting still. That's okay, I guess. If you're running Caminite, you can get it up to 41%. And if you were to compare that to something like the Comet, if we go back over to Tankopedia, we go to Tier 7, British, and where is the Comet? Wait, did I click on Tier 8? Let's do Tier 7. There you go. We found the Comet. We take a look at the Comet's camo, and look at that. It's the same on sitting still, but moving it drops down to 19. So that's a big advantage for the A46, let alone the mobility. We can see the power to weight differences are quite a bit. It's not as much of a difference on medium terrain, but it is still 8 more. That's going to be quite substantial. But in general, what I will say is that I think the Comet is going to be just as good in most situations, if not better. It's got 12 degrees of gun depression. It's got still really good mobility, and it's got a little bit more hit points because it's a medium. I think the A46 will be fun, and don't get me wrong, I don't think it's going to be bad at all, but I also don't think it's unique enough to really set me apart from the Comet in any way. I'd still probably pick this tank over the A46, so yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what Wargaming ends up doing to the vehicle. What I would like to see is maybe a lower base DPM value, but a higher high explosive damage output. So what I mean by that is maybe, like the A46 has 250 damage on the high explosive, but only like 160 on the standard. That way you have like 2200 DPM on firing AP, but then you load Hesh and you have like 2900. So you'd have this big damage difference and you could get out some big chunks, but it also wouldn't make the tank OP. That's what I'd like to see. But obviously, at the end of the day, it's down to Wargaming and what they end up doing. So, as always, if you'd like to see more content like this, more up-to-date videos and guides, and obviously when this tank gets released, a very quick video explaining its capabilities and my opinions on it, make sure to click that subscribe button down below. I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.